Don't let the hag ride you. Sam Watson was always tired, but when he found out why, he was terrified. He just couldn't live like this anymore. So he had an idea to set up a camera in his room so that he could see if he was sleepwalking or waking up in the middle of the night without realizing it. He turns on the camera and lays down for the night. The next day he wakes up, tired as usual, and goes to the camera and turns it on. At first, nothing was out of the ordinary, but then he noticed a shadow forming on the wall behind him. It grew larger and took a human-like shape. He watched as it crawled up his body and then sat on his chest, sucking the breath from him little by little. Never go to the Alaskan Triangle. In 1972, U.S. House Majority Leader Hal Boggs boards a Cessna 310 plane and sets off on a campaign trail. Little did he know what was about to happen. As the plane crosses a well-known hotspot in Alaska, it just disappears. No mayday, no sign of trouble. It's just gone. 59 civilian planes, 40 military aircraft, and a search radius of 325,000 square miles, and they found nothing. No sign of wreckage, no survivors. 4 in every 1,000 people that go into this area disappear. Never go to the Great Dismal Swamp. Several years ago, a park employee was traveling the roads of the Washington Ditch Trail when she comes upon a couple dressed in colonial clothing. Believing that they were dressed up for some costume party and had gotten lost in the area of swamps, she pulls over, rolls down her window, and asks if they needed help. But she receives zero response. Her dog is frantically barking from the passenger side. She looks over for a split second to hush her pet, and then when she looks back, the couple is gone. 3 a.m. thoughts. We have all heard of how many people go missing in our state parks, but have you seen how close the locations are to the cave system? What is in these caves that we don't know about? Never go into the Manistee National Park alone. 5 years ago, U.S. Army veteran Joe Barger was hauling a load of paper through the Manistee Forest when he notices he's losing air. But while fixing the leak, he starts to get a very uneasy feeling, and he hears strange noises coming from the woods next to him. He looks over and sees large shadows just at the edge of the tree line. He jumps back in his truck, looks left and makes sure that no traffic is coming, and then takes off. He looks over to the right passenger mirror and he can see nothing, just black. That's when he notices a creature at least 10 feet tall looking down into the cab of his truck. It had yellow eyes and teeth at least 3 inches long, and it was there for one reason. Joe is frozen. He's never seen or heard of anything like this. He picks up his gun, aims, and shoots. Wanting to make sure that it was dead and that he wasn't crazy, he finds a spot to turn around, but all he saw when he came back was flattened grass and a wide mark dragged out into the woods. Go to Fouke, Arkansas. Bobby Ford and 3 friends were hanging out at his home when something scary happened. His back door swung open, and what they saw next was nothing short of terrifying. A massive creature with thick fur and sharp claws stood outside his home. The men chased after it, leading Bobby to be injured and barely getting away. He visits Texarkana Hospital, and his story is posted in the Texarkana Gazette. The legend of the Boggy Creek Monster is formed. Never go to Fort Mountain, Georgia. 2 young men set out to visit historic Fort Mountain when something tragic happened. While taking a photo of his buddy, one of the boys was so scared of what he saw that he had a heart attack and died at the hospital 2 days later. When the surviving friend later took the photos to be developed, what he saw was horrifying. An entity standing next to him as his buddy snapped the shot. Whatever you do, never knock on this bridge in Texas. Oscar Washburn was an African-American goat herder known for his quality of farm goods. But his success angered the local clan, so they made a plan to take care of the goat herder. Late one night, they stormed his homestead with pitchforks and torches, and they drug Oscar out of his house. As the mob gets closer to the bridge, Oscar notices something that makes him realize that he's not going home. A rope hanging from the bridge. Up the hill and on top of the bridge they go. They put the rope around his neck and push. Off Oscar went. After a few minutes of laughing, they go to see the man that they just hung, and his body is nowhere to be seen. Legend states that if you go to that bridge and you knock 3 times on the trusses at midnight, a creature so hideous will appear that it could only be the spawn of something vengeful. Red glowing eyes, a goat-like head and feet, and carrying the heads of its victims. Disturbing things caught on camera. A group of teens are playing catch when they notice something strange in the building above them. Ghost caught on camera. She was sitting on her couch when she noticed something strange in the reflection of her TV. She picks up her phone to record that nobody is sitting next to her, but then this happened. Bloody Bucket Bridge, Florida. This legend starts during the Civil War. A local slave lady gives birth to a beautiful baby boy. Moments later, the townspeople rush in her home, rip the child from her arms, and then out the door they go. There she laid bloodied with tears pouring down her face, promising herself that she would get them back. Fast forward a couple of years and she is appointed the town's midwife, but what she does next is horrifying. She would suffocate every child and tell the mom they were stillborn and throw their remains in a bucket, and she would then go onto the local bridge and dispose of them. If you go onto that bridge on a full moon night, the water is running blood red and the cries will haunt you. Never go down Evangeline Road, Louisiana. 2015, a group of urban explorers go searching for a local legend. This creature is said to be the spawn from a satanic ritual performed by a group of outcast circus performers in the late 1900s. They were deep in the woods and night was fast approaching, so they decided to set up camp. But it's what happened when one of the explorers went to pee that sent shivers down my spine. It was way darker than normal that night. The man walked about 10 feet from the fire and behind a tree. But when he turned around to go back to camp, everyone was gone, and the woods was completely silent. He called up a friend to tell him what had happened so that if he doesn't come back, someone would know why. When the rangers got to the campsite, the scene was horrific. Blood and body parts were everywhere. What happened to the explorers, and why didn't he tell his friend that the others were dead? Warning, this is scary. While walking through the park, this guy caught something very horrifying. Pay attention to the swing. Disturbing things caught on camera. This woman is filming her dogs when she noticed one of them is staring at something in the hallway. Movies too disturbing not to watch. An arrogant blogger travels to a town to make fun of a kid who does something crazy and goes viral. When he gets there, the kid can't do the interview, so he meets up with what seems to be a normal old man who has some amazing stories. This leads him down a horrifying path that he will never be able to return from. The movie is called Tusk, and you can watch it on HBO Max. Disturbing thing is caught on camera. A mom's gift for her daughter quickly becomes a nightmare when the doll turns to look at the girl. The look on her face makes me believe that this is 100% real. They were chopped in half. October 9th, a phone call comes into the Okmulgee police station. My son is missing. That morning, Alex, Mark, Billy, and Mike had set out on a bike ride and never returned home. After further investigation, two of the men's phones pinged last in an old junkyard owned by no other than Joe Kennedy. Joe was known around the town for being a shady character and was previously charged with the violent event that happened in that very junkyard just a few years earlier. It's later found out that the men had set out to possibly make a big hit, one that would pay them all a good sum of money. But they didn't get to complete their crime, as they was later found shot and dismembered in the Deep Fork River. Never go to Defiance, Ohio, or you may end up food. On a cold, foggy night in 1972, a train yard worker is making his rounds. He bends down to tie a shoe when he notices something strange. Directly in front of him was two very big, hairy paws. He looks up and a 6-foot-tall, half-man, half-wolf-looking creature is staring at him. He ran, scared to look back until he gets to the guard building and slams the door behind him. When he looked out the window, the creature was nowhere to be seen. It was cited several more times over the coming months, leading the police to take the case very seriously. The local newspaper also printed the, by then, several sightings to get the word out to everyone to stay vigilant. And the legend of the Werewolf of Defiance was born. Never go in the woods of southeast Oklahoma. On a foggy day in 1970, a group of high school kids are cruising the back roads of southeast Oklahoma. One of the boys had to pee, so they pulled over. He got out of the truck, walked about 50 yards into the woods so that he couldn't be seen. He heard a tree snap, looked up, and he's staring in the eyes of a creature 3 foot taller than any man It had matted hair, red eyes, and blood dripping off its chin. The boys ran as fast as they could back to the truck, yelling, "Start the truck, start the truck!" But what happens next is terrifying. The boys go to the sheriff's department, and when the deputy goes out to investigate, all he sees is animal carcasses everywhere, and the legend of the Green Hill Monster was born. Murdered by her friend. October 9th, 2020, in a little home in New Boston, Texas, a very pregnant Simmons Hancock is taking care of her 3-year-old. Little did she know that tragedy was at her doorstep. Later that morning, her friend Taylor Parker, who was also pregnant, was pulled over by a state trooper while giving birth and taken to a hospital in Idabel, Oklahoma. Or at least, he thought that she had given birth. In an attempt to keep her boyfriend, Taylor had been lying to everyone about being pregnant, and when she ran out of time, she committed a crime so horrible that she was immediately given the death sentence. Earlier that day, Taylor went over to Simmons' house, stabbed her over 100 times, and then performed a C-section and took her baby, Braxton Lynn Hancock, who also didn't make it. Never drive down Riverdale Road in Colorado. Jason wakes up, straps on his running shoes, puts on his headphones, and heads out for his morning jog. Had he known what was about to happen, he probably would have just slept in. 30 minutes into his jog and Jason is dead. An unknown man struck him with his car and then left the scene. 2 years later, a young couple was driving past the spot where the accident happened when all of a sudden their tire popped. They pulled over to the side of the road and sat for a moment as it was very dark outside. That's when they heard the footsteps getting closer and closer, but nobody was out there. They locked the doors, but all of a sudden a handprint showed up on the window as if someone was looking in. Then the banging started. Somebody wanted in, or something. They closed their eyes, waited for dawn, and that's how the legend of the Phantom Jogger was born. This Delaware court is haunted. In 1741, on the grounds of the Delaware Supreme Court, a crowd gathered to mock Mr. Chew. They had a habit of making fun of the man, but would soon be paid back for their smirks. After his death, he was often seen lurking under the old poplar tree, creeping out the very residents that would mock him before his death. Was he planning something sinister, or just trying to give his pranksters a scare?